Welcome to Ephesians 4:12 Ministry. We're continuing on in the series, Crisis of Belief, the narrow path that few find and even fewer follow. I'm sharing stories out of the book in this series of stories that the Lord has given me to share. I once heard someone say something that I'll never forget, and that is that the 18 inches that separate our minds from our hearts is the longest spiritual journey that any of us will ever take. If we look at the Bible in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 says, "Trust the Lord with all of your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Seek His will in all that you do, and He will show you the path that you should take." At this point in my spiritual journey, God began teaching me deeper truths, which challenged my religious beliefs. This story begins with the Lord leading me to go on my first mission trip. I was experiencing a crisis of belief because I did not believe at that time that the Lord would want the white man to go and evangelize on the Native American reservation. What I didn't understand, because I've never been on a mission trip before, was that God often uses mission trips to change the people that answer the call to go. Watch this. After I went on the walk to Emmaus, I received an email from Trish Burkett inviting the Emmaus community to go on a mission trip to Montana. Each time I got an email from her, I hit delete, because I didn't believe that in going on a trip like that. Then all of a sudden, about 2 weeks before the trip was to take place, I got another email from Trish saying that somebody had to back out and that there was an opening and the trip was pretty much already paid for. I prayed about it, and suddenly the Lord gave me a bunch of confirmations that He wanted me to go. I'll never forget when I met with Trish, she handed me a notebook about that thick that told me everything about the mission trip, but also a lot of information about the Native Crow Americans. And as I was flipping through this notebook, I came across the Crow emblem. When I was looking at it, I was amazed because there was only one piece of jewelry that I owned that was Christian, and it was this necklace that I had been wearing for the previous year since I became a Christian. It was an exact replica of the emblem for the Crow Nation. Now I had, without any shadow of a doubt, a confirmation that something was up here, that the Lord really wanted me to go on this trip. While I was on the mission trip, I found myself being confronted with yet again another crisis of belief. Only this time, the crisis was I found out they were starting a Bible school there to ordain people to become pastors. What the crisis was in my life was God really calling me to relocate from Austin, Texas to Montana? And was He really confronting me and asking me to become a full-time minister of the gospel? Moving from Austin, Texas to Montana made zero common sense. There was a bunch of obstacles in the way that seemed to make it impossible for me to even consider going back there 3 weeks after we took our mission trip so that I could be there for the startup of this new school. Number one, I had a $1,200 a month mortgage payment on the condo in which I was living. Number two is that I had a Lexus Sports Coupe 400, which I still had at that time, which would not have survived the winters up there in Montana. Number three, I had really nice furniture, and it was very heavy, and it would have been very hard to stick that furniture into storage. And number four is I didn't have a job, and I didn't have any savings left, and I didn't know how I would be able to pay my living expenses in Montana. When I called my brother and asked him what I should do, he said the same thing that my mother said when I called her to ask her what I should do. The first question was, how long are you going to be gone? And I told him I think it's a 2-year Bible school, so I expect to be gone 2 years. My brother and mother said, well, then you need to sell your condo. You don't need to hold on to it. When I talked to my next door neighbor, Jean Butterfield, she said, you shouldn't sell your condo. She said, property values are increasing. She said, I'm a real estate agent. If you pay me a small management fee, I'll make sure that I get good tenants in there for you and get them to sign a year-long contract. So you only have 2 contracts that people have to sign while you're gone. After I prayed some more about it, God's grace spoke faith into my life and gave me the ability through supernatural grace to be able to move forward confidently. When I prayed, the Lord was very clear to me and spoke and said, write down why you think you can't move to Montana. While I was praying, the Lord spoke supernatural grace to me and gave me the ability to continue to move forward. And what the Lord said is none of those things are a problem. And He was very clear. He spoke thought impression into my mind that made it very clear. And that thought impression was this, is that, yes, I want you to go to Montana. I want you to let somebody that's in ministry live here for free while you're gone. That you can pay for it by cashing in some of your 401k money. And if you'll do that, then you'll be able to still have plenty of money left in your 401k to use until I tell you what to do with the rest of that. And the Lord said, as far as your Lexus Sports Coupe 400 is concerned, it won't survive the winters in Montana, and you're too attached to that car. You need to get rid of it and trade it in for something different. Suddenly, God had helped me through faith and through supernatural grace to be able to move beyond the limitations of common sense in the direction through prayer that He was leading me to go. Even though I had all the confirmations that I felt like I needed, and even though I felt like I was hearing clearly from the Lord, I needed just one more sure confirmation that it really was His voice that I was hearing and that this is something that He really wanted me to do. I was praying for one more confirmation. As I was driving down the road a few days later, suddenly I felt like the Lord was telling me to turn into this Christian bookstore that I had never been to before. I walked into the bookstore, I walked right over to where the Christian authors were, and I pulled a book off the shelf that I'd never read before from an author I'd never heard of before. That author's name was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. When I pulled his book off of the shelf, called The Cost of Discipleship, I opened it up and I closed my eyes and I just took my finger and I pointed on a paragraph. And the paragraph that I pointed on was this. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said in his book, "A cross is laid out for every Christian. The first Christ suffering which every man must experience is the call to abandon the attachments of this world. It is the dying of the old man that results in his encounter with Christ. As we embark on discipleship, we surrender ourselves to Christ in union with His death. We give over our lives to death. Thus it begins. The cross is not a terrible and otherwise God-fearing and unhappy life, but it meets us at the beginning of our communion with Christ. When Christ calls a man, He bids him to come and die." So let me ask, are you experiencing a crisis of belief? Is God challenging your religious beliefs? Would you be willing to pray with me now and invite God to invite you into a deeper and richer experience with Him? Well, then I hope you would join me in praying. Lord, I want to follow You. I want to be a part of Your kingdom that operates on earth. And so, Lord, help me. Help me, Lord, to hear Your voice and help me to take the next step in the direction that You're leading me. In Jesus' mighty name I pray.